skulls, swords, and longships. When we picture a Viking warrior, it's usually a muscle-bound, bearded man, right? For centuries, that's the story we've been told. But what if I told you history has been hiding a secret? A secret so powerful it could rewrite everything we thought we knew about the Viking Age. Today, we're not just telling a story. We're uncovering a truth that was buried for over 1,000 years, a truth that historians tried to deny. This is the incredible, scientifically proven story of a real-life Viking woman warrior. Let's travel back to the 1870s in Birka, Sweden, a major Viking trading hub. Archaeologists unearthed a spectacular grave, cataloged as BJ 581. Inside lay a warrior, buried with the ultimate arsenal: a sword, an axe, a spear, two shields, and even two horses, a clear sign of a high-ranking military leader. For over a century, everyone assumed this powerful commander was a man. It had to be, right? The sagas told of shield maidens, but most scholars dismissed them as myths, literary fantasies. This grave, they argued, was definitive proof that only men held such esteemed positions. They labeled the skeleton the Birka man, and the case was closed. Or so they thought. The skeleton sat in a museum, a celebrated male warrior, for more than 100 years. But a few curious researchers in the 2010s started noticing things that didn't quite add up. The pelvic bones seemed a bit wider, the facial structure a little more delicate than your typical male Viking. Were they just seeing things? Or was this the clue that would unravel a century of accepted history? The questions were dismissed by many, but a small team decided to push further. They weren't going to rely on old assumptions. They were going to turn to science for the ultimate answer. They decided to do what was once impossible: conduct a DNA test on the 1,000-year-old bones. The team, led by Charlotte HiddenhistoricalTales Johnson, carefully extracted DNA from a tooth and an arm bone. The lab began its analysis, and the historical world held its breath. When the results came back, they were an earthquake. No Y chromosome. Instead, two X chromosomes. The high-ranking Viking commander in grave BJ 581 was, without a shadow of a doubt, a woman. The Birka man was a woman. The discovery sent shockwaves through the academic community. Suddenly, the myths didn't seem so mythical anymore. This wasn't a character from a saga. This was a real person, a woman who lived, fought, and led men into battle. So, who was this warrior woman? The grave goods tell a story of her life. The full set of weapons wasn't just for show. Wear and tear on them suggest they were used in combat. More incredibly, she was buried with a set of game pieces, not just any game, but Nafataful, a Viking strategy game similar to chess. This wasn't just a soldier. She was a strategist, a commander. The game pieces suggest she was responsible for tactics and planning, a leader making life-and-death decisions on the battlefield. She wasn't just fighting alongside the men. She was likely telling them where to go and how to fight. Imagine the scene. A fleet of longships slices through the misty waters. On the lead ship stands our warrior, her armor glinting, her hand on the hilt of her sword. She's not just part of the raiding party. She's in command. Her presence would have been powerful, respected, and maybe even feared. The evidence in her grave points to a life of authority. The two horses, one mare and one stallion, were a symbol of immense status, a luxury reserved for the elite. This woman wasn't just an outlier. She was at the very top of the Viking military hierarchy. She had earned her place through skill, intelligence, and ferocity. But the DNA results revealed even more. Her genetic profile showed she wasn't from Birka. Her DNA was more closely linked to regions in present-day southern Sweden, suggesting she was a traveler, someone who moved to Birka, perhaps as part of a mobile warrior elite. This mobility was characteristic of the Viking world. They were explorers, traders, and raiders who traveled vast distances. And she was right there with them, a key player in this expansive, dynamic society. She was part of the warrior class that connected and conquered different parts of the world. The backlash from some historians was immediate. They scrambled for other explanations. Maybe the weapons belonged to a male relative buried nearby. Maybe it was just a symbolic burial. They couldn't accept that their long-held beliefs were wrong. But the evidence was undeniable. All the weapons were in a single, undisturbed grave with a single occupant, the woman. To suggest otherwise was to ignore the science. This resistance revealed a deeper bias, a reluctance to accept that women could hold positions of power and violence in the past. It showed us how easily history can be shaped by our own modern assumptions. This discovery forces us to reread the sagas, not as pure fiction, but as stories rooted in a forgotten reality. Tales of shield maidens like Lager or Herveyor are no longer just fantasy. The Birka warrior gives them a face, a skeleton, and a genetic blueprint. She proves that the Viking Age was far more complex and diverse than the male-dominated image we've been sold. Women weren't just waiting at home. Some were on the front lines, shaping the course of history with a sword in hand. They were leaders, strategists, and warriors. The story of the Birka warrior is more than just a cool historical fact. It's a lesson in how history is written and how it can be rewritten. It reminds us to question the narratives we're given, to look for the voices that have been silenced, and to use every tool we have, from ancient texts to modern DNA, to uncover the truth. The woman in grave BJ 581 was almost erased by a century of assumption and bias. But now, her story is finally being told. She wasn't an anomaly. She was a Viking, a warrior, a leader, and history will never be able to forget her again. Thank you so much for joining us on this journey back in time. What do you think about the Birka warrior? Let me know in the comments below. And if you love uncovering the hidden stories of the past, make sure to like this video and subscribe for more. We'll see you next time.